I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show we have Andrii Yasinetsky, CEO of Mnemonic. Andrii, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Excited to dive into Mnemonic, but I'd love to start off our conversation with just a little bit on yourself and your background in tech and blockchain and how that led to being the CEO of Mnemonic, and then we'll dive into all the details.
Yeah, totally. Well, my background technically starts when I was 8 years old. When I got my first computer, it was, I think, 91. I've learned how to write basic code, like literally in basic language. And that's where the story starts. Been with computers my whole life, pretty much, and studied in Kiev originally before moving to the US. I was studying computer science and electrical engineering, electronics, and most of my background was in software, data systems. I moved to the US about 14 years ago. Joined Google, where I was working on Google Analytics and some of that infrastructure behind the scenes. And somewhere around 2014, one of my current co-founders, Ben, reached out from Uber and suggested that we chat. We met at Uber HQ back then on Market Street in San Francisco over coffee, and there was just mutual kind of interest. Since then, everything went pretty quickly. I joined Uber in a matter of a couple of weeks. The fun fact about that was that, like, literally a couple of weeks before that conversation, I sold my car. I actually never looked back. I still don't own any. And since 2014, I was completely relying on Uber, Lyft, and other ways of transportation. But that was one of the sort of selling point. Like, hold on a second. Okay, I'm interviewing at Uber, but actually, that makes sense. I literally sold my car 2 weeks ago, and I don't see a need anymore for it. And I kind of like struck in my head that yes, that's probably going to be a fundamental shift overall in the economy over the next couple of years. I've joined just right at the time when we're starting to have the massive growth. I think we just raised like Series C or B when I joined somewhere around that time, and I was early on Uber Marketplace. So basically, we were a small team building logistics platform and figuring out dynamic pricing and infrastructure and how would that power the logistics and transportation of the Uber system in general. So I spent a lot of time working on solving marketplace dynamics and the marketplace problem. And then later, I joined ATG, which was a self-driving unit at Uber, where I led the platform that allowed and enabled third-party self-driving vehicles into Uber's network. So my team built the entire stack, starting with cloud infrastructure, vehicle infrastructure, security, telemetry, and all those components that are required to commercialize self-driving, essentially. So my whole career was spent on data and working with massive data infrastructure, data lakes, and that sort of led me on the path of exploring blockchains, because blockchains ultimately are the biggest open databases in the world, or rather, they will, I believe that this is the sort of ledger that will store all of our interactions, purchasing history, and everything we do in the digital space will be stored on blockchains over time. And just looking from that data perspective, data lens, kind of on that problem, I realized that in a few years, maybe in the decade, this is going to be one of the biggest data challenges in the world, sort of like in the Web3 world into which we are moving. And sort of applying my Google hat, I realized that someone will have to organize this data, someone will have to index it properly, normalize it, and make it accessible, but on top of it, provide a lot of intelligence. And so when I started kind of chatting to a few people, I got connected with my current co-founder, Elena, who has a PhD in machine learning and AI. And she was exploring that blockchain space from her perspective as well as a data scientist, and trying to dig through a lot of data points, and had problems similar to what we're seeing today, of basically how you access this amount of data and run analytics on top of it, data science, etc. And so when we started chatting, we realized that, hold on, this is actually we're trying to approach this problem from different perspectives. I'm looking at this as a infrastructure challenge. She looks at this as it is a data science problem, and combining our two backgrounds, we decided to start a company, and the rest is history.
Great backstory, Andrii, and you're right about blockchains having a lot of data, and I feel like there definitely needs to be more tools to index that, or to turn that data into information that can be actionable. And I'm guessing that's where Mnemonic comes in. Could you talk about what is the vision of Mnemonic, and what are you doing with this data to bring it all together?
Yeah, so a quick basic fun fact about the weird name Mnemonic and where it came from. It's I don't know, but there in '90s there was this cyberpunk movie with Keanu Reeves playing the main character. It was called Johnny Mnemonic, and basically he was the person who was working as a data vessel, essentially. So there's a technology that allowed him to upload data into his brain, some private information, and then basically he was like a vessel of this information somewhere else in the world, and where the client would download that data. So he was like a delivery kind of person of the data, and after this data would be downloaded, he would forget about it forever. And so the whole plot and the story was around that. And so that's how Mnemonic name came about. But generally, Mnemonic is the NFT intelligence data platform, and we're ingesting and indexing data from blockchains. That's basically table stakes. You have to have a ground truth foundational data in order to be able to build analytics and intelligence on top of it. So once we solve that, we are applying machine learning, our machine learning algorithms and models to learn different kinds of behaviors from that data. Wallet behavior, different profiles of people interacting with digital assets, and basically that allows us to create a very rich and powerful data set, not just analytics, but also data set that is powered by machine learning, that allows us to get rich context from that data. And so we're providing this data through APIs to enterprises, businesses, developers, anyone who's innovating in the Web3 space.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good to know. And with analyzing information about NFTs, a lot of people that aren't really deep in the industry, they hear NFTs and they just know there's the digital collectibles, whether it's the CryptoPunks, apes, graphics, artworks, things, and people understand that, yeah, it's going to expand to be, real world assets, and all of these different types of any, non-fungible assets could be tokenized into an NFT. But I feel like we're really not there yet, at least in the mainstream. What are, some of the main use cases that, with what we're seeing in NFTs today, that companies would use Mnemonic to analyze that information?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we see NFTs as being foundational technology that powers, will power a big chunk of Web3, as we call it. And that technology goes way beyond collectibles and JPEGs of apes. I mean, it's a great use case. It's fun use case, but most great things start as fun and games, and then they start to provide a lot of utility. We're not 100% there yet, but what we're seeing from kind of our point of view is that more and more brands, iconic brands in the world, that have nothing to do with Web3. They're traditional old brands that we all know today: Starbucks, Nike, JP Morgan, Warner Music, you name it, Adidas, that are innovating in the space and are trying to see, they see the potential to commercialize this technology. And our general thesis is that these are the kind of companies that will be the main driver for the wider consumer adoption over the next couple of years. And they will figure out how to provide best utility and best experiences to their users. Starbucks, I think, is a great example where they see it as a way of providing loyalty, to their customers, long-term customers. I think ticketing is going to be a big use case in general, where by purchasing a ticket, you're also the NFT has been created, and then that gives an opportunity, a way for the artist to engage with everyone who came to the event, who's a fan, reward them in the future, reward long-term holders, provide them new experiences, maybe unique access backstage, whatever. There's a whole spectrum of experiences you can imagine that could be built on top of these NFTs that essentially provide a way to engage, understand your audience in a much better and a much more sophisticated granular level. And overall, I think where this is all going, I think that we are moving towards a hyper personalized world, so to speak. So if you look at Web 1, in Web 1 we had ads as well. And ads were all over the place, to the point where on MySpace, for those who remember, there was not a single pixel probably in a web page that would not be an ad. And that probably is something that inevitably led to the MySpace's sort of current future, and opened up an opportunity for someone like Facebook and Google to grow in that space. But in Web 1, all the ads were generally just banners, right? And some kind of flashy, interactive flash media. In Web 2, the content was monetized. And in Web 2, we learned how to understand the audience, how to derive context from people's behavior on the internet. But still, it was largely based on some kind of an abstraction, a cohort analysis and secondary sentiments. When we like something, when we comment, when we engage with the content, that's kind of like a derivative activity, which tells you whether someone might like something, and we will offer them this product. In Web3, for the first time ever, we're actually able to look at and into people's wallets. And this is the strongest signal, I think, which will inevitably lead into super personalized world where you and I will have completely different experiences that will be tailored to us, whether it's content, access to entertainment, goods, whether physical or digital, and so forth. So that's kind of the future that I envision, and that's the future towards we're building Mnemonic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I feel like there's going to be a catalyst where we move from that general understanding of what NFTs are to all these other real world use cases, which I think is going to be very exciting. And I'm curious on what you envision, that sort of timeline for that to happen. Because I running a startup, I've heard the quote before that being too early is sort of the same as being wrong. And I'm curious on how you're lining up the timing for this. When you think, I know all these major companies that you mentioned, Adidas, they're already working with NFTs. But sort of when does that roll out to the mainstream audiences?
Yeah, Ken speaks to some of these timelines on the brand side, as we're actually working with a few. But yeah, I think we're definitely early, but we see early signals of that is being that is happening. I would say maybe not particularly this year in terms of kind of like a global rollout and wide audiences. But I think this year, particularly because of the macro environment and what we see in the market, this is a build time, and I think that's the time when there a lot of experimentation is happening. A lot of companies are innovating. I think early next year, maybe mid next year, we should see some of these brands actually launching like real integrations, real experiences. There are definitely some leaders in the space. I'm a big fan of Nike and what they did with Artifact, and like that's just the early examples of like first steps, and trying the waters and trying to innovate. Like how can we bridge that gap to like a regular consumer? I think what we'll see from Reddit, I think what we'll see from big sports like NFL and others, I think will determine, like will help to engage much bigger audience and bring it into like Top Shot at one point, right? Like those kind of things. On the other side, I think enterprises and sort of like bigger institutions and banks and companies that are innovating in the Web3 are continuing to build, and our product is serving those needs as well. We just announced partnership with Coinbase. We've announced the launch of Base as well, which Coinbase is launching very soon. So there's a lot of development happening, which allows us to keep going, build new products, innovate with the market. I think a couple of years is probably a reasonable bet.
Yeah, no, I think that the specific approach that and sort of the niche in which some of these companies, like Artifact and Nike, I think they did a good job finding a niche that's interested in the technology, that's ready to adopt it. And what we saw with Instagram, last year deciding to integrate NFTs, and that's the biggest platform in the world for posting photos. Every photo could become an NFT. But sure enough, not very many people used it, and now Instagram has sunsetted that and said, we're taking away the NFT part. Maybe in the future, everyone will turn their pictures into NFTs, but what's the value behind that? It seemed that it wasn't ready for the mainstream, and people just didn't see value in having NFTs on Instagram. I'm curious on your take on that.
Yeah, well, on the other hand, Reddit has a much greater success. I think what Instagram did was done wrong. Like I'm not in a position to criticize. I think Instagram is absolutely a great product. Has a lot of users, consumers. But I think in order to tailor to as we call them Web2 or regular users, we need to abstract away all these complexities and notions that, what is the wallet? What is a chain? Like which blockchain you're interacting with? What is NFT? I think all of those things should be abstracted away. I think Reddit has done a great job, and Starbucks actually is doing something similar, is changing those names, changing notions, changing terms that are familiar to regular people. And I think that's the right type of strategy to take, especially in the next couple of years when this technology is evolving.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there about partnering with Coinbase, which I think is very exciting, and one of the leaders in the space. And I remember last year when they released their NFT marketplace, it didn't do very well compared to OpenSea and these major ones, and there was a lack of volume and interest in it. Maybe it just wasn't the time for them. But I'm curious on what that looks like moving forward, and how hopefully they can make a comeback with the help of Mnemonic on actually having usability for NFTs and analyzing that data and actually making it actionable.
Yeah. So I think first of all, there is just this many marketplaces we actually need. Like how many we need? How many, let's say, eBays do we need? And I think over time that most of these marketplaces will consolidate. There are clearly winners in the space right now. Blur, OpenSea, a couple others. I think they cover the majority of the volume. We don't need yet another marketplace, I think. So from that point of view, I'm not too worried, actually. I'm more excited about what Coinbase is doing right now in the broader ecosystem by launching Base. I think that's a it's a big move. First of all, built on OpStack, which is very exciting. They decided not to, fork and create their own yet another chain and yet another protocol. They are contributing upstream into the optimism, and I think that's the right way to do it moving forward. We also don't need this many blockchains overall, I think. Launching cloud and Web3 cloud was the part of that strategy, I think. Now we saw the release of wallet as a service. So to summarize this, I think it's more of a infrastructure move, infrastructure play, long term, similar to like AWS at the time, than trying to build on top of speculative type of behavior. I think we've seen that. I don't think we need more of that type of things. I think we need more of a solid infrastructure, solid players, and trusted companies. And Coinbase is the most trusted company backed by public market, and that's the right sentiment to send to the broader ecosystem that, hey, this is a trusted, solid environment where any brand, any enterprise can go and build safe consumer experiences.
Yeah, good insights, Andrii. I agree. Infrastructure play is what we need, and if we're going to onboard more users, in the next 100 million users, we're going to need infrastructure that's stable and able to support that many and easy to onboard into. So I'm looking forward to it. And now moving forward with Mnemonic, sounds like you guys are making great partnerships with big companies. And what are some of the next steps in the roadmap and releases? Is it just partner with more large companies and work with them to get their products to their customers at the right time?
No, we're happy to serve the generally entire ecosystem. Obviously, like partnering with big players has its own benefit, but also takes a long time to foster those partnerships. We're working with a number of Web3 companies too, and brands. In fact, I think in a couple of years, some of these Web3 native brands will become large brands, widely recognized, which just needs to take some time, to mature. So we're betting on small players as well, and trying to power the ecosystem in general. We actually have, I think, the most generous free tier on the market in terms of to just incentivize everyone to build their products, innovate. While we're all in this build market, we rather focus on powering a lot of those companies that are trying to experiment, trying to innovate during these difficult times, giving them opportunity to scale, and not particularly focus, trying to drive them into the difficult business conversations. So we're pretty much open to the entire ecosystem. And in terms of what we're launching next, I think we have announced Optimism is actually launching soon, Base. That's on our website. We are building more towards providing greater intelligence. We've sold foundational data component, we've sold the ground truth that's available. We've sold analytics components, so you can build experiences. If you're a wallet, you can build rich portfolio views, provide analytics around all your holding statistics and all that. We've launched our spam solution, which is the only solution on the market that is wallet focused. We're analyzing behavior of every single wallet in relation to other wallets on chain. And so that allows us to build a much better, more accurate spam solution, which is personalized as well. So for instance, what's considered spam for you and me could be different. Just like in the regular email kind of spam, it's all based on our previous interactions with those entities on the web. And that's how we see a spam problem and a solution as well. But we will be continuing kind of diving into the intelligence part. We just launched Audience Insights, which allows you to really, any brand or kind of a company that is working with audiences or community, right? That is launching their new collection, and better understand their audience and their behavior with behavioral sort of labels on a wallet level, common collections, common trends across different segments. We provide audience segmentation as well. And so that's where sort of we're continuing to kind of move and develop more products.
Looking forward to seeing it. And if the viewers want to follow along with these updates or the partnerships and just learn more about Mnemonic, what is the best way for them to get involved?
Yeah, it's we have Twitter, Mnemonic HQ is our Twitter handle. Our website is the same, mnemonichq.com. You can sign up to our newsletter or just sign up for an API key. It's free. I think those are the best channels.
Great. I can leave those in the description box below as well. Thank you so much, Andrii, for all the insights into NFTs and the value that they're going to provide beyond what people see them as now. And I think it's going to take people by surprise. And it's very exciting to see such large companies and enterprise adoption taking this technology and using it in a way that adds value to the audiences and the end users. So I appreciate what you're doing at Mnemonic. All the best with everything moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's create and ride that wave together.